Hello my friends, welcome back to Refit and Sam. My name's George, this is the Solent Boat Butler, and in this episode we will finish off fitting the deck gear on this Contessa. So in the last episode you saw me fitting these winches here. These are the Spinlock winches. Over here we have primary winches there, and just out of shot down there is the main sheet traveller system, all from Harken. And in this episode we're going to pick up where we left off last episode, and we are going to be fitting some winches to the coach roof, which are just here. These winches here, so hallied winches, we've got clutches to go on there, Lewmar clutches, and we've got deck organisers from Spinlock. So we're not being a brand whore, we are using multiple best of breed products on the deck of this Contessa 32, and we will pick up the story, I think, just about now, where I start drilling some holes for some deck organisers. Now that we've got all the cockpit deck gear in, you can see there are 4 winches. They are under plastic bags just to keep them clean, and there's the track down there. We need to start thinking about what's going on the coach roof. So we've got some clutches and some winches and some deck organisers. So if you watch the earlier episodes, you will know that there is a nice shiny new deck ring there, Selden deck ring, and we need to run those lines aft. So I normally start this process by putting the deck organisers on, which will fit somewhere in there, and then I know where the lines are going to run aft. They have to go over the top of that air vent there, which needs a new central plastic bit because it's all degraded, and it has to go over this little water break thing here and onto the winch. Now, most owners like to have the winches as far inboard as possible because it just makes it slightly easier to spin a winch, particularly if you've got the spray hood up. It gives you a little bit more freedom of movement with the winch. But before we get to that, let's look at the deck organisers. I can't remember if I showed you at the start of this video because I'm recording this over the space of about 2 weeks, but we are fitting these Spinlock deck organisers. I particularly like fitting these to Contessas because Contessas have a slightly curved deck, and these things, because they only have a bar along the top, you can flex them and fit them over a curved deck quite easily. They conform to the shape really nicely. Now when it comes to fitting these, most people would probably think you go straight for the through bolting route with big washers and nuts underneath the deck, but you don't actually need to do that because these only have a side load on them, and each of these wheels, each of these sheaves has its own bolt. So what I tend to do is I drill and tap into the deck. Now it's just a glass fibre deck, there's no metal in there or anything like that, but because it's just a side load, and because any loads are actually going to be spread across 9 fixings, each of them is an M6, then that is plenty strong enough and it shouldn't ever move. And I've done loads of them like this and it has never ever been a problem. It also saves us from having to worry about what's going on with the headlining. Up here we've got this very shiny, lovely headlining which is unmolested with no holes or anything like that in it, which is why I want to resist making holes as much as possible. Now when it comes to fitting the other deck gear, so we've got a winch and we've got a set of clutches to fit up here. I'm pointing up here and the camera's hopefully following me. Those do need to be properly bolted down, the winch in particular. So we're going to have to access this underneath the headlining somehow. The other option is we bolt it through the deck and through the headlining and then end up with nuts on the inside, but that's pretty ugly, to be perfectly honest with you. Another option is to cut out an access hatch and then put a cover over it, and again, it's not great if you want to keep the originality of the boat, but if you've already got a damaged headlining, then maybe that's okay. I've done that in the past where people have had multiple bits of deck gear up here and it's just looked a bit ugly, and I've just fitted new stuff and then put a white plastic cover over the whole thing. But what I like to do, and what I'm going to do on this boat when it comes to fitting the deck gear here, is I'm going to carefully cut out a section of the headlining, fit all the stuff that I need to fit, and then reinstate this piece of headlining and do a little gel repair around the outside. You might just about be able to see when it's done the little line of the new gel coat that goes in if the colour match isn't quite right, but it should be good enough that most people will not notice. The first thing I need to do now is to work out where these deck organisers are going to go and start drilling some holes. Now I'm in the fortunate position of having fitted many deck organisers and done lots of deck gear fitments on Contessas, so I pretty much know the formula that works in terms of location, and generally speaking I have it roughly pointing at the corner of the middle hatch, if you have a middle hatch, and coming from, there's a little upstand down here which is a good marker, and I kind of split the difference in the angle between the ropes coming off the base of the mast and the ropes going aft towards the clutches. So I'm just going to mark off one hole, drill and tap that, put a fixing in, and then I'm going to mark off all the other holes, knowing that this thing can't move. The deck is about 10 mil thick normally, 8 to 10 mil, so I know one viewer is going to laugh at that because he has a Contessa which has a very thin deck, but typically 8 to 10 mil, which is plenty strong enough for the 9 fixings which are going to hold this 7 fixings that are going to hold this 6 sheave Spinlock deck organizer. I've now drilled and tapped for the deck organisers on both sides. You can possibly just about see the holes on the other side there, maybe not. But you can see what I've done next, and this is what I always do to try and get alignment kind of in place for where everything's going to go, is I stretch out a piece of rope going from, I mean it doesn't really need to go from the mast deck ring, but through the deck organisers and back, so that I can work out where everything wants to go to keep things all roughly in line. And the rope also needs to obviously pass over that deck vent, so I have to raise up the clutches ever so slightly with a little block. So when it comes to fitting these clutches, they need to be brought up just ever so slightly so that the ropes don't rub on the deck vents, and I do it using little blocks of black plastic like this. This is HDPE. This black plastic, I get it machined to just be ever so slightly larger than the base of the clutch, and you can see it colour matches quite nicely, and it's all that's needed just to lift it up just a smidge. So what I'm going to do is drill my 4 bits of plastic and then fit these down to the deck. Unlike the deck organisers, these are going to be through bolted, and the winch is also going to be through bolted, but not all the fixings are going to be through bolted. So there are 6 M6 fixings for this 3 clutch block, and on the forward ones, which is, got to work out which way it is, forward ones at this end, because these clutches kind of open backwards if you're used to Spinlock. On the forward ones, I'm just going to drill and tap into the deck, but the back ones will get drilled and through bolted, and that's because if you think about the rope pulling on this, it's going to try and pull the back up and push the front down, and so again it's going to be a side load largely on the fixings. So to save me some work downstairs and just to make it a nice neater job, as I said, drill and tap the front ones and through bolt the back ones, and that will work very well indeed. I've known some boats that have just had these fitted with self tappers, which I really can't recommend because they will pull out, but on some instances I've gone to replace some deck hardware, I've gone, these are just on like size 10 or size 12 self tapping screws into the deck, and they've kind of been okay. They haven't moved, but I'm not sure I'd want that on my boat. It's a bit of a balance between, do you have this pointing directly in the line of the rope, or do you have it slightly straighter? Because I think if you have it slightly at an angle, which is what it wants to be absolutely accurate in terms of the rope, it's going to look a bit funny. So I'm just going to straighten it up ever so slightly so that when you look at it visually it won't look twisted. So that is going to do the job. It's going to deflect the rope ever so slightly, but that is not a problem. I'm going to mark off a few holes. Looks about right to me. about see that. Right, I'm not going to drill that all the way through. I'm doing that because I want to work out where inside that is going to be, and where the aft ones are, they're going to be, you know, a couple of inches, 3 inches behind, so that I can work out where the headlining holes need to be so that I can access the underside of the deck. A quick break in the proceedings to just remind you that you can support the show in one of 3 ways. The cheapest way for you to support the show is to give me a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel. It does make a massive difference to the growth of the channel. If you want to be a super awesome viewer, you can also buy me a beer. There is a link down in the description, a PayPal link, where you can buy me a beer or 2 or 3, which helps pay for microphones, lighting, software, and all the other stuff that I need to pay for to run the channel. And sometimes I even spend the money on actual beer. Thank you very, very much. And I shall continue now with the rest of this deck fitting story. Well, I have done much measuring, and you can see on here there's some masking tape, and on that I've drawn a rectangle, and all the fixings for the clutches should be just under here once they are bolted down, and the winch is going to be just about there. Rather than cut 2 panels out, it's easy just to cut 1 big panel out. It's also worth erring on the side of caution and making it slightly bigger than you need, just in case your measurements are a little bit out, and I'm tempted to actually take that over slightly. I might do that in a minute, just to 100% make sure that we can get to the holes once I've drilled them through. But it's just a case of taking my oscillating saw to this and chopping that section of headlining out, and then I'll be able to reinstate it afterwards. Well, my phone just overheated because it's so hot today, and the phone was in the sunshine whilst I was cutting this out. But you can see I've cut my access panel, and whilst waiting for the phone to cool down, I've just been drilling some holes. Well, up here on deck you can see I've had 1 clutch fitted. It isn't permanently fitted. All I've done is drilled and tapped the fixings at that end, and that's allowed me to mark off the holes for this end, which I now need to drill. So I'm going to remove that. And then whilst that was on, I just butted up against it the other clutch, and those are drilled out to 5mm so I can tap them, and those are drilled for 6mm so the fixings can go all the way through, and those are the holes that you could see from underneath. Unfortunately, as well as overheating my phone, it's also running out of battery, so I'm going to have to probably stop filming whilst I continue working here, which is slightly annoying, but that's the way it goes. Unfortunately, this is not my full-time job. My full-time job is fixing boats. I just make films for a bit of fun, and I hope you enjoy them. If you are enjoying this, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. It does make a big difference to the growth of the channel, and I really, really appreciate it if you could do that. It takes less than a second. It's just boop, that subscribe button. Thanks very much. It is now the next day. It's also my birthday today, so happy birthday to me. And to celebrate, I'm going to be fitting some more deck gear for your pleasure and for my client's pleasure. Now, these halyard winches need to go somewhere here, and the tricky thing with winches is they're always handed, so they always only turn in one direction, and so the lead position is always onto one side, and that's not necessarily an issue other than you want to locate this so that the lead into the winch is as straight as possible, particularly for the high load lines. Not such an issue for the reefing lines that are going to be in here, but there's going to be a couple of halyards here which will be Dyneema and will be higher loads. However, obviously if you're putting the same winch on the port side and on the starboard side, and you want to get the lead position right, on this side it's coming on here, on the other side it'll be coming on the same side, and the location might be slightly different to get the ideal lead, and visually that can look a little bit strange. So generally what I try to do is think about where the highest load lines are and kind of try and split the difference in terms of location of the winch so that it kind of visually looks about right without compromising the lead angle too much. So this is going to go in just about here. I'm going to set it so that the lead is kind of right in the middle of these two blocks, and then on the other side it might just be that the lead is slightly off, just to visually make it look about right, port to starboard. Tempted just to bring it in just a smidge so it goes in around about there. The fitting of these is exactly the same as the fitting of the winches that are in the rest of the cockpit, so I'm going to take this winch apart in a minute, and there are some captive holes for putting the M6 bolts in, and I'll just do it up from underneath with some sealant. But before I do that, I've got some little bits of gel coat I need to knock down here because I did some gel repairs on the coach roof from the old deck gear that was on here. So I'm just going to take a sharp knife to these and just scrape off the excess gel coat, and I might do a bit more finishing up of that at a later date. But for now, I want to get these on, do the other side, and have all this deck gear all installed and looking beautiful. Well, that's all bolted down now, so I can just pop the drum back on the winch, and I apologise about the noise. We've got sanding going on the bottom in preparation for copper coat on the high protect that is down there, so I am sorry about that. Right, I need, there we go, I knew I put them somewhere safe. We have the stripper ring, needs to go back on the top, and I don't think he's going to want it there. Normally I think having it about there so it's kind of close to facing you so you can see what you're doing. Might even turn it around one more. It can always be changed at a later date. Yeah, that'll work. So you have to orientate this stripper ring to exactly where you want it, because it will be different for every boat and every location and every application. But I think having it facing you, you're going to bring the rope on up onto the stripper ring into the top here, and that will do nicely. Let's tweak these up. And then the lid can go on. The lid in the central bit. It just needs to be kind of finger tight just to retain it. One winch, done. Lovely jubbly. So we have some rather large holes here, but we have also the piece we cut out. So it's simply a case of refitting this back into here. Now all these boats are slightly different, and I'm sure if you go from a Contessa to another boat you will find something different again, but all these Contessas are different in how much of a gap you've got underneath the headlining, between the deck and the headlining. And what is often the case is that there isn't a lot of space, and in the case of this there isn't actually enough space to hide these nuts. So what I need to do is just tease this down very slightly. You can see I've got a mixing stick in there because I was just playing with it off camera. What I have to do in this situation, I just have to put some packing pieces in behind here just to pull the headlining down enough to give me clearance such that when this goes back in, it is going to all go back flush. In terms of gluing it back up, I build a frame around the inside of here to glue the headlining back up to, and I do that using this stuff, which is 1mm thick glass fibre sheet that you can just buy. It's used for model making, it's used for, well, all sorts. In fact, I just ordered some more and it was advertised as being used for battery separation plates if you're making your own batteries, because it has insulative properties. This is epoxy sheet, and I only have this left over. Annoyingly, I've been meaning to order some and I forgot until now, so I might just have enough to build a frame. So I'm going to cut this up into 25mm slices. So I'm just going to get some 25mm masking tape because this is the easiest way to measure it. Put strips of masking tape on here and then just cut along the join with my oscillating tool, and then I'm going to put tabs of this. Can't always do long pieces, sometimes you have to do shorter pieces because there's curvature in the roof and I want to maintain that curvature. So I'm just going to cut this into sheets, cut this into slices, scuff it up with some sandpaper so I've got a nice rough surface, clean it all down with acetone. Do the same in here, try and get a bit of sandpaper in underneath here. I can normally just poke it in and kind of rub it along like that and create lots of dust, so I'll use the vacuum cleaner in a minute to do that. And then I'll glue this in place as a frame with some quick setting epoxy. Once that has cured, I'll clean off the excess and then I can pop this back up. What I need to do is work out which way round this goes. Fortunately, I've written forward on that side, but I'm going to write forward on this side so I can take the tape off. And then I'll be able to pop that back up and glue it to the frame that I have just made. Temporarily, I will pop some little screws in the corners and maybe at the midpoint just to hold it up while that fast setting epoxy cures. And then it's just a case of doing a little gel repair in the gap and she is all done. Now I'm not going to get this all done today because I'm not sure if I've got enough, and I'm not sure if it will get delivered tomorrow, but we shall see. But I'm going to start by cutting this up into the strips that I need. Thinking the best way I think of showing you this, what I'm going to do next is just to do one small section just here and then stick a time lapse on. You can see me do the rest of it because it's a little bit tedious if I'm perfectly honest with you. So I have one of my strips of glass fibre sheet, epoxy sheet, and that is going to slide in just in here quite nicely. There's a lump in the glass fibre there that's going to hold it down, and what I will have to do here just to keep this pressed down against the headlining is just make a little wedge out of some cardboard or something like that, and I'll shove that in there and that will just hold it in place whilst it cures, and I can pull it out afterwards and reuse it. The glue I'm using is this stuff, so West System G5 fast setting 5-minute adhesive. It's an epoxy adhesive, so it's perfect for use with this stuff because this is based this is made with epoxy as well. That's obviously polyester, so it's all going to bond together quite nicely. So I'm going to mix up some of this on a pad and we will glue the first piece into position. So this 5-minute epoxy is super easy to use. You mix it up with a 50-50 ratio, and it's a warm day, so it definitely is going to be a 5-minute cure on this. Here's the two little tubes. I keep them upside down in the box because when it's slightly cooler It doesn't always want to go down. As we all probably know, epoxy is very temperature dependent and its viscosity changes massively with temperature. Here's a little bit of cardboard. Just gonna give this a little squeeze. Go a bit more. I think I might end up having to buy some more of this very soon. This bit is coming out the nozzle a little bit easier. Right, that should be enough for the little piece that I'm going to glue up. Normally I would glue 2 or 3 pieces at a time, but this is an example for you guys at home or wherever it is that you watch these videos. So it needs a good mix. And I will apply some to the boat and some to the piece that I'm gluing in place. Right, that is probably mixed enough. So I'm going to scroll you back up. There we go. And try and do this without dropping it everywhere. Just kind of get plenty in there. I'll pop a bit on here now. Just I can scrape off or remove excess once it's in place. I just want to get it on because the clock is ticking, both in terms of this is a 5-minute epoxy and I want to get the job done, so I'll pop that in there. Now I'm going to get a bit of a dribble there. I'm just going to rip off a little piece of cardboard and fold it up to make a little thing to just push it down. There we go. That's nicely wedged in. I might actually put a bit at the other end as well, having looked at it. The trick is to push your cardboard in without dislodging your little piece of glass fibre sheet. Easier said than done sometimes. I have to wiggle it in place. I'm sorry if my arms are in the way. But there we go. Right, there is now a bit of excess there. I'm just going to scrape off. This has the remnants of a bit of acetone on it. There we go. Now I can leave that to cure. And whilst it's curing, I'm going to cut the next pieces up, which are going to go in here, in there, in there, in there. And I can also tell my friend who's working on the bottom of this boat, he can start sanding again, because I had to tell him to stop, because we're getting ready to put copper coat on the bottom. So do stay tuned if you want to see copper coat going on a Contessa and how to do it. I'm sure it's the same process for putting it on any other boat. Right, crack on. What I'm going to do next on this is it's just going to need some screws in the corners and maybe at the midpoint just to hold it up in position while the glue goes off. So I'm just going to drill a few small holes, find some suitable screws, probably size 6 screws, just to go into these little corners, and then it's ready to glue up. I'm going to leave that for probably an hour or two. As much as it's 5-minute epoxy, it does take a little bit longer to achieve a completely full cure. Then I can take the screws out and have a look to see about this gel repair. In the meantime, I'm going to get on with doing the other side. As you can probably tell, that is not an easy thing to do single-handed, but at the same time, if you have 2 people, there isn't a lot of space to actually work in, so I just kind of did my best there. Sometimes I actually balance it on the top of my head just to try and hold it in place while I get the screws in, but whatever works, you know. Sometimes masking tape, sometimes your head, sometimes a friend who's got an arm that can just come in and hold as required. But anyway, it's up now, and just the gel repair to do. Well, the screws have come out and the shirt has come off because it's very, very warm today, so I apologise for showing you some of my naked body. It's only the top half that's naked, in case you're worried. I am going to now mix up a bit of gel coat. You possibly can or cannot see that I have done some masking around these lines. What I tend to do is I do the 2, I was going to say vertical, but the 2 in one direction, and then take the tape off and do the other 2 in the other direction. It just makes it easy using masking tape because I can get the gel coat filler in there and then just use a little putty knife or something, scrape along the top of it, take the masking tape off, job done. It won't take long to cure in this sort of temperature, and in half an hour or so I'll be able to come in and do the ones in the other direction. This has all been wiped down with acetone. The other thing I had to do was there was epoxy in this kind of glue line here, which I wanted to take out because I want to fill it with gel coat, so the gel coat goes right up inside the crack. So I did run around it with my oscillating tool, just gently, just going a couple of mil in where the epoxy had kind of squeezed into the gap. So so that's all done. So I am going to do another time lapse, sorry, but do another time lapse and pop some gel coat into here, and hopefully the colour match will be close enough. You've got to remember, this is headlining, it's not immediately above a bunk, no one's really going to look at it. As long as it looks tidy, we are winning. So I think we'll get it pretty close to looking factory fresh, hopefully. That's the plan. And there we have it, the gel coat filling is done, and that is pretty much there. There's one little drip of gel coat just here, which I'm going to clean up afterwards, but you don't need to see that. I'm going to do the same on the other side, but I can't do the other side until I get some more of that GRP sheet, which will hopefully arrive in the next day or 2. And that also brings us to the end of this video. So we've seen Harken winches go on, we've seen the Lewmar clutches go on, we've seen the deck organisers go on, and all there is now for me to do is to buy a whole bunch of blocks which are needed for the base of the mast. I need some spinnaker blocks, I need some main sheet blocks, and there is one clutch that's still going to get fitted. That is for the furling line, and I like to fit that on the deck just outside the cockpit combing, and then the furling line can go through that clutch, through a block, and then onto one of the spinnaker winches, and that works really, really well. I've done it on loads of Contessas, including my own. But anyway, that's the end of the video. Please do like and subscribe. It's YouTube, so I've got to say that, but genuinely it does make a difference. Something like 15% currently of my viewers are subscribed, and I'd really like it to be a bigger number. It absolutely helps grow the channel. So if you want to see this channel grow and me to do more projects, more exciting stuff, then please hit that subscribe button. And to those that support the show financially using the link that is down in the description, thank you very, very much. It really does help keep the lights on. It helps pay for microphones when I drop them in the sea. Yes, it does happen. If you've seen my earlier videos, you'll know that. When I melt camera mounts using acetone, yes, that happens as well. So it does help fund all those bits and pieces that I need to buy or replace to keep the show on the road. So thanks again to you, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.